So good morning, everybody. With a little bit of delay, the usual academic quarter of an hour, we will start our morning session. First point of order, so to speak, for those of you who have not registered in front of this hall, there are lists where you have to register. So please do it after the session or between the roundtables, so we have full documentation of who has attended the conference. It's important for our own administration. So I hope you had a good night's sleep. It was a very taxing but extremely dense and interesting day yesterday, full of information, and I hope you had also the chance to experience Milan by night, for those of you who don't live here at least, because you have that pleasure probably whenever you want it. So we are into the second day with also a very interesting morning session. Professor Sonja Stefanizzi, who's on the program, will not be with us, I have been told. We have two roundtables. The first roundtable is on education and training for preventing and combating gender-based violence. And we have three experts with us who will introduce us to their respective case studies. One expert from the United Kingdom, one from France, and then I think online one expert talking about Romania. And the first expert I would like to introduce to you is Professor Anne-Laure Humbert, who works as a professor of gender and statistics at the Oxford Brookes University. She's also the co-director of the Center for Diversity Policy Research and Practice, and is probably one of the foremost specialists in Europe on the question of statistics and gender. And this is also really the main focus of her research. And I give now the floor to Anne-Laure Humbert.
Closer? Here we go. Here we go. And I will try and stay close to the mic, and I also apologize. I have a little bit of a cold, so I hope I'm going to be able to have my voice for the entire presentation. As Olaf said, I'm a professor of gender and statistics, but many of you will be relieved to know that today the presentation I'm going to give is not going to be about indicators, data, or statistics, or anything like this. Although if some of you want to have discussions about that, that's just always very welcome, maybe perhaps over coffee. What I'm going to be talking about instead is some of the work that I have been doing over the last few years on gender mainstreaming in relation to higher education, and in particular the mainstreaming of violence. So I see gender-based violence as both a cause and consequence of gender inequalities, and it is absolutely impossible to consider any work on discrimination and inequalities without putting violence at the center of that and considering violence in itself as a form of inequality. And therefore, the approach that I've had in gender mainstreaming higher education, in particular the curriculum in a higher education institution, has very much followed that approach. That idea that violence needs to be incorporated into the gender mainstreaming of higher education. So I could just nearly argue that it's about doing a double mainstreaming and mainstreaming violence in gender mainstreaming itself. I'm going to give you a few examples, about 4 examples of the work that I have been doing. I am based in the UK at Oxford Brookes University, but some of the work that I've been doing has been much broader than this. So some of the work that has been conducted in collaboration with the Council of Europe or the European Commission. Some of it is related to funded projects by the European Commission under the Horizon programs, for example. So just a really, really broad range of examples and not something that is necessarily related to the specific context of UK academia. So the first project that I wanted to show you is a project that I did a few years ago in collaboration with the European Union and the Council of Europe, which was the production, the development of a checklist for gender mainstreaming in higher education, and this specifically for law schools. So looking at the specificities of how these questions could be applied in the training and education of the next generation of law students. So it is a checklist that is available online. Of course, if you Google this, you will be able to find the tool itself, but also the checklist and the questions and reasoning that are underpinning this. And today I'm just going to show you a little bit of the questions to give you a flavor, an idea of what is involved in that. In this checklist, we divided the areas of intervention into 4 parts. We started with an area of intervention which looked at the what. And the what is about looking at gender-sensitive content and ensuring that there is a gender equality perspective in all aspects of the curriculum. The second area of intervention is the how. And the how is very much to do with pedagogical approaches and embedding gender in different modalities in teaching and learning. And for example, the need to address gender biases both in knowledge and attitudes, in particular in the teachers, in the students, but in the way in which we approach our teaching as educators. The third area of intervention of the checklist is the who. And here looking at the actors, making sure that the actors themselves work within gender-sensitive structures, paying attention to the gender composition of staff. So for example, on courses, on modules, but also just along the lines, if you have an entire program which for students could last as long as 3 or 4 years, to just make sure that there is a broad gender composition over that period of time. Making sure that the members of staff are adequately trained and understand the issues at hand when it comes to gender equality, but crucially, gender-based violence. And then the last area of intervention is the context, the ecosystem, and making sure that it is gender sensitive with an institutional commitment to make sure that gender is mainstream in all aspects of the curriculum at all levels. So at the level of the delivery by educators, but also at the level of program leadership, at the level of the senior executive, and so on. And to support this by regular assessment and monitoring of the provision of a gender-sensitive education. So more specifically, I'm going to give you some extracts which I've selected from some of these questions and to show you the relevance of that and how much violence is embedded into this work. Question 1, for example, of the checklist asks people that use it to reflect on whether there are basic key concepts related to sex and gender present in the law curriculum. And some of the answers that are provided here to aid their reflection are whether different types of law give relevance to gender equality, and giving examples here in the case of custody rights where violence against women is involved. Another example, question 4, asking people that use the checklist to reflect on the concept of sex and gender in the law curriculum specifically, presented not only as inequality at the individual level, but also shaped by structural factors in the environment. So a question which is very much trying to get people that use the checklist to just reflect as to where inequalities are taking place and what are the factors contributing to this. So for example, looking at sexual harassment legislation at the level of individuals, but understanding that it is shaped by policies on gender-based violence in the workplace, and framed by a wider legislation at either the national or international level. Also arguing that the law by construction is sexist, since de facto women are disproportionately affected for example, in the case of family law. Another point of reflection in this part of the checklist is also asking people to reflect on looking at the extent to which men's greater propensity for violence in the context of subject areas like criminology and criminal law are related to expectations and expressions of masculinity and masculinities, and in particular toxic forms of masculinities. So a lot of concepts really that are unpacked, and in the tool themselves, just some definitions for the tools that might just be a little bit more specific as you might have in a context, for example, of masculinities. Question 5 was asking about key concepts related to human rights, fundamental rights, gender equality and violence against women legislation in the law curriculum, and here very much focusing on the texts themselves. So looking at gender-related themes within major conventions. Or in question 6, teaching materials being regularly reviewed to ensure the absence of stereotypes. So here in relation to the law curriculum that was looking at discussing landmark cases for gender equality in the national context, discussing possible biases in sentencing, and how to mitigate the training of judges on gender-based violence, and more specifically on sexual violence and rape. Also looking at more structural factors, so here in the case of parenthood, looking at and getting people to reflect on the impacts of gender stereotypes and considering their effect on possible judicial decisions for dependent children, in particular in situations of intimate partner violence. So also in the case of sexual violence in this answer, some strategies have been criticized, such as not relying on the idea that sexual violence might be justified by loss of self-control of the perpetrator and or provocation of the victim. So really introducing quite a lot of these key concepts, ideas here about violence myth, just to people that may not have a lot of prior exposure to these concepts before. And then for example, these questions were very much asking reflections about the what, but it's just like in terms of the ecosystem. Let me give you one example of that. So question 22, for example, looking at measures in place. So asking people, are there measures in place to ensure gender equality, the elimination of sexism, and the physical, sexual, and psychological integrity of both women in the institution are in place? So, and here it's just very much just having this as, it is the last question in the checklist, but one which is meant to be there as a framing for the rest of the checklist, and just to really note that there is no possible gender mainstreaming of the curriculum in law or in other subject areas without ensuring the safety and absence of violence for all actors in that ecosystem. So I'll show you now another project and what happened next with this, because this is a checklist which was developed in a specific context, and really very much with the idea of having the law curriculum in mind. And bear in mind, I'm not a lawyer, so it was reviewed, and I had great help from colleagues with a legal background on this. But what we did is we adapted this checklist in another project to something that is more generic. This is a project funded by the European Commission under the Horizon program called Gearing Roles. So again, it's a project which if you put it in a search engine, you will find this and all of the resources. And for this, we adapted the checklist to make it adaptable to just many other areas. So having said that, I don't think it is yet universal, because it very much reflects our experience. They're just much more aligned to social sciences and may not be completely suitable, might need further adjustment, for example, for people that want to use it in a more science, technical, engineering, math area, for example, though I still think it is relevant. So it is available on the Gearing Roles project as more generic. But what we did next is we used the framework of the checklist to produce a handbook of teaching and learning strategies. So again, this is something that is freely available as an e-publication on the Gearing Roles website, and we put a call for contributions for this under the 4 areas of interventions, with some very interesting ideas for mainstreaming the curriculum in higher education, including case studies related to gender-based violence. So I've just pulled out 4 of them to give you an example of the type of case studies that you might expect if you look at this resource. So case study 1.6, looking at gender empowerment through legislation and extending concepts or extending the characteristics of hate crime. Case study 110, which is about how to discuss gender-based violence through literary text. Case study 112, called The Legal Profession, Senior Judiciary and Gender. And finally, case study 2.3 about gender justice in social science. So the format of these case studies is slightly different for everybody that contributed to the handbook, although we provided a template to try and have a little bit of consistency across this. They're relatively short. They're typically no more than 2 or 3 pages, and they are meant to act as a guide for you if you wanted, for example, to have a lecture or a session on a particular topic, to have all the resources, ideas of how it was implemented, sometimes even have links to the presentations or to videos that are underpinning this. So really a lot of resources available here. In parallel to this work, what we were doing is, this is very much about how we mainstream education on gender-based violence generally, but within the curriculum. But we were doing also a lot of work on how to do this as something that is extra or co-curricular. And in Oxford Brookes University, my colleagues have been very active over the last few years in developing what's called a sexual consent education module, and so we call it the consent program for short. So what is this? It's based on the fact that according to UK statistics, but this is, if you look at any other data, for example, the UNICEF data or other, it's just really, really typical of what we see in all institutions. 1 in 3 women students in the UK have experienced sexual assault. In many cases, in about half of the cases according to this source, it is the case that the perpetrator is another student, with 30% of incidents taking place on campus. And this is not without consequences, as we know. As a result of that, students that have experienced sexual assault might disengage from studying, might disengage from going to classes and so on. So here, 25% experience skipping lecture tutorials, dropping or changing modules in order specifically to avoid the perpetrators. And 97% do not report their assault to the university. So very much that's just what this program was about, and responding to the problem of rape on campus, let's be blunt, which is affecting just all campuses in Europe and beyond. So the consent program is a program that is placed on our virtual learning environment. It is a module that all students are expected to complete once a year at the beginning of the year. Usually we have it during induction. There is an opt-out that is possible, but only in cases where students might find it triggering. And anecdotally, I understand that it's just something that is not used very often. So the vast majority of students do engage with the consent program. So it is followed by a signposting immediately to needed follow-up by the students themselves in case they are triggered, or via a member of staff if that is needed. So there is a lot of investment also going by the university in trying to not only educate our students on consent, but also having support mechanisms in place to support them. So it's also about supporting the staff to understand the importance of consent in a higher education setting. Although I have to say that this is still limited. It's a split between the staff that are engaged with the consent program and really understand what the issues are, and some people that are sometimes, maybe if I'm a bit abrupt, you'll forgive me, but might need to wake up to the problem a little bit more. Again, I don't think that's something that's specific to our institution. And the plan of the consent project is to continue to generate resources and training materials to develop staff levels of competence and confidence in their consent knowledge and application, to continue doing this work with a trauma-informed perspective, and to continue to engage with staff and students, and in particular with the senior executive team in the university to ensure that we provide a safe environment for this. So quite a lot of work happening and a lot of progress. I'm not saying that everything is perfect yet, but it's just certainly compared to a lot of other institutions that I've seen, it's just there is really a will to make things happen and great efforts happening in systematizing things. And then finally, I will show you another project which I've been extensively involved in, and that has been just running in parallel to the consent program and informing what we've been doing. Some of you might have heard from it yesterday from my colleague Pan. It's the UNICEF project, which is another project we have funded by the European Commission on the horizon, and looking at making universities and research organizations safe from gender-based violence. This is a project that has three main aims. The first one is to produce knowledge, so a lot of empirical material. We have done a survey of 42,000 students and staff across 15 countries and 46 organizations in Europe. We have done case studies of institutional measures, interviews with victims of gender-based violence in the context of academia, mappings of national and organizational policies and so on. But the aim of the project has been really to translate all of that empirical knowledge into tools, resources that are now being disseminated and have the aim of empowering institutions and individuals to study and work in environments that are safe from violence. So I'm not going to have time to just talk about all of the outputs of the project. Again, please go and see the website. I just wanted to really make you aware of the toolkit, which is one of the last thing that we have published under the project, and which aims at really regrouping a lot of the material that has been developed by the project itself. So a really fantastic resource to go to. And if you have questions about the toolkit, Pan is here, if you want to ask her questions about that. So just to give you a kind of preview, very quick preview of what's in here, a lot of capacity building materials, some webinar series that have been pre-recorded, or also just scripts that you can use if you want to deliver your own training based on the material that is there, a lot of recommendations for institutions, reading lists, and so on, and the list goes on. So I will leave it here. Thank you very much. I really hope that this presentation has inspired you to find resources and to just really think about that double mainstreaming, how we mainstream violence into the mainstreaming of gender equality we do in our educational activities. And if you have any questions formally or during the break, please don't hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Laure Humbert, for this really insightful and well-researched presentation. I can imagine that you are in high demand to be a speaker in a lot of universities, because the problems you have just talked about, they are prevalent probably everywhere in Europe. And while Oxford Brookes might be a real trailblazer in this, with all the projects you have presented and also with the research you personally are doing, I can imagine that the levels of where universities in Europe stand with this are very, very different. So there's a lot of work still to be done. We now come to the second speaker, who will introduce us to the French case. And I welcome Dr. Anna Matteoli from the University of Strasbourg in France. She is a researcher and also a teacher at the University of Strasbourg. and she is at the same time the director of the Center of Information on Rights of Women and Families of the Lower Rhine Department. Dr. Mattioli, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about the role of universities in preventing and combating violence against women. As Olaf says, I work in two ways about this topic. I work for a Women's Rights Association. This association offers training on violence against women and domestic violence to a variety of professionals, police officers, lawyers, social workers, or health professionals. We also run campaigns to raise awareness on violence against women in school. In doing so, we apply 2 articles of the Istanbul Convention, Article 13 on awareness raising, and Article 15 on training of professionals. Alongside my work with this association, I also teach civil law and human rights in relation to violence against women at the Faculty of Law of Strasbourg. Today, I represent a group of researchers based in Strasbourg who support the French Ocean Network. And I would like to extend a special greeting to Christina Odon, who was in the audience yesterday and a leading member of this network. The aim of this contribution is to show that universities play a key role in preventing and combating violence against women. When it comes to this subject, at least 4 articles of the Istanbul Convention are involved. Yesterday, Maria Andreani-Kostopoulos said there are more articles, but we will focus on these 4 articles this morning. Article 13 and Article 15 that I already mentioned, but also Article 14 on education and Article 11 on data collection and research. In this presentation, we will focus on the action organized by the Strasbourg Faculty of Law. To do this, I'm going to develop 3 major aspects of the role that university or faculty can play in preventing and combating violence against women. First, faculty can play a role as an educator. Secondly, as an employer and an institution with a duty to ensure the well-being and safety of its students. And finally, faculty has to play a role in society. Let's start with the topic of the law faculty as an educator. Knowing that I was going to be talking about the role of university in this topic, I made a small survey among my students at the beginning of this academic year. Because I had the feeling that in the Faculty of Law, there are not a lot of courses regarding violence against women. I asked my students 2 questions. Have you ever had in your academic life courses about violence against women? If yes, in which disciplines and how many hours? And the second question was, were you made aware of this subject during your secondary school education? I conducted this survey with 2 groups, 50 students, and the result was not a surprise. Only 3 students had a few hours of lesson on this subject in criminal law in course of their studies. Julie Matussi, member of the French Ocean Network and also a law lecturer at the University of Strasbourg, suggested doing a survey on a larger scale. As coordinator of equality issue at the Faculty of Law, she had the opportunity to carry out such a survey for this presentation, thanks to Julie. And of the 329 respondents, only 11% have had courses on violence against women throughout their studies. And most of them, like for my students, had a couple of hours on the topic and only in criminal law on sexual violence. A second question was asked: have you ever received information on gender-based violence outside the university? Students have information outside the university, but mainly through social networks. And only 27% of respondents have received courses or information in secondary school. There are two main reasons to change the situation. First of all, there are a legal obligation. Indeed, under Article 14 of the Istanbul Convention, parties must take the necessary steps to include the teaching material on issues such as equality between women and men, non-stereotype gender rules, and gender-based violence at all levels of education. We talked about this yesterday. Therefore, university law faculty have an obligation to do something about teaching violence against women. And the second reason is the reality of the future professional life of law faculty students. Why is it so important to have these courses for students? Because in law faculty, we teach the next generation of judges, lawyers, law enforcement officers. And this professional will encounter victims of violence and perpetrators. And they must have had some knowledge on the subject to avoid making too many mistakes. However, we can see progress because in the national French exam to become a lawyer this year, the subject of one of the tests focused on domestic violence. This seems to be an anecdote, but it is not. The lawyer is one of the main professionals who will meet victims and perpetrators of violence, and they must be trained for this. There are some solutions to implement. Firstly, the issue of violence against women can be addressed in course at all levels in law faculty. Such courses can be made mandatory. Courses should give to students legal understanding and critical understanding, because in law faculty we give only a legal understanding and it is not enough. We must give a critical understanding. Courses should have a multidisciplinary approach, including the sociological aspect. And now we will look at the project presented by Anne-Laure Herbert. I think it will be very interesting to us to be inspired by this project. Research is also a good tool for giving a real place to the issue of violence within the faculty. In doing so, law faculty fulfill one of the articles of the convention, Article 11, as it was said yesterday. Following these principles, we made an initial study in 2016, not 6 years ago, at the law faculty. This multidisciplinary study was carried out with psychologists and sociologists. Its aim was to evaluate the arrangement for dealing with domestic violence. I think that this was an important step in bringing this topic in law faculty at Strasbourg. Now, let's have a look at the role of faculty as an employer and an institution with a duty to ensure the well-being and safety of the student. In the survey that we made with my colleague, another question was, who would be your first point of contact if you were a victim of gender-based violence at university? The question leads me to another observation I would like to develop with you, the number of victims of gender-based violence at university. For this, I refer to the survey of the Observatory Gender-Based Violence in Higher Education, which is a national student association. Its first national survey was published in October 2020 and received over 10,000 responses. The results are clear. 1 in 10 female students had been sexually assaulted. 1 in 20 female students have been raped. In 2022, the Student Observatory have launched a national barometer which aims to update and expand the 2020 survey, and the results are the same. Indeed, nearly 1 in 10 students say they have been victims of sexual violence since entering higher education. 1 student in 10 has been a victim of sexual assault in business school. Despite the limitation of comparison between the two reports, we can say that many students are still victims of gender-based violence. Doctoral students and lecturers are not included in the survey, but we know that professional relationships are not free from gender-based violence. According to a 2014 study, 1 in 5 working women has had to face a situation of sexual harassment during their career. Faced with this significant number of violence, the university must act. We can also point out that in France, the university has a legal obligation to act. Indeed, since 2019, all public bodies have been required to set up a system for reporting acts of violence, discrimination, harassment, and sexual harassment. This system must include the following 3 procedures: listening and receiving reports, referring victims and witnesses to the relevant professional responsible for providing them with support and assistance, and referring victims and witnesses to the relevant disciplinary authorities. More specifically, in Strasbourg, we can say that the system has 2 levels. At the university level, there is a vice president responsible for equality parity. A specific listening and support unit has been set up to deal with gender-based violence under the authority of this vice president. This unit can be contacted by email at an anonymous address. At the law faculty level, there is an equality, parity, diversity referent. The objective is to have a representative on the site available by appointment. It was decided that the contact email would be a nominative email. That is the system, a beautiful system with 2 levels. But at the question, you have the result. Who would be your first point of contact if you were a victim of gender-based violence at university? 30% of students say they didn't know there were internal solutions. and 50% would choose a solution outside the university. These results led us to reflect of the effectiveness of such mechanism. We must be careful that this mechanism do not become just a tool for political communication. To avoid this, it seems necessary to improve knowledge of this system by students and staffs. It also seems necessary to affirm the confidential nature of the units. A good practice in this area may be to have nominative addresses. Indeed, if you are a victim within the faculty and you don't know to whom you are sending the email, it is certain that some people will not make a report, not knowing who they are addressing. A major point of attention must also focus on raising awareness and training the people in charge of the unit. Indeed, without training, it is easy to produce sentences that will discourage the victim in their efforts. Training should be done before taking up the position. It seems so evident, but we can say that, and not at the personal expense of the advisor. It can also be interesting not to be alone in receiving the victim's words. Now, let's consider the role of faculty as a player in society. To raise awareness and combat violence against women, university must not only develop action within their wall, but also beyond them. With that, university can implement 2 articles of the Istanbul Convention. Firstly, it's useful to refer to Article 13 regarding awareness raising. Under this article, university could organize events to raise awareness of violence against women. For example, at Strasbourg, at the beginning of the year, Welcome Day is organized to introduce students to university life. As part of this, there are stands run by associations to raise awareness of gender-based and sexual violence. The university can go beyond its wall when taking part in training courses for professionals. We can use also Article 15 regarding this training. Law faculty can share its expertise with lawyers, judges on judicial complex points, as, for example, the question of the consent in rape. Secondly, it can organize multidisciplinary conferences. I will present the example of our group of research that I present in the opening. We have launched a series of conferences entitled Gender-Based Violence, What Are We Talking About?, with the aim of initiating a critical reflection of this definition. The conferences are multidisciplinary, drawing on approaches from law, sociology, psychology, and political science, as well as the arts. These conferences are open to the general public, to everyone, and are held outside the university. We can also say that internships can be a good way of raising awareness among students. Indeed, when students do the internships, it can be an excellent opportunity for them to raise their awareness of this issue by choosing an organization that deals with violence against women. To conclude, we have seen that to raise awareness and combat violence against women, university must not only develop action within their walls, but also beyond them. Partnerships with NGOs help create a network to achieve this goal. We believe that in order to break the cycle of violence and silence, it's essential for all stakeholders to get involved. And universities have an important role to play here. Indeed, we have just seen that universities have many tools to spread a culture of preventing and combating violence against women. Universities must use the tools and perhaps change the world. What a beautiful goal for a Saturday morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matteoli, for sharing your, in a way, specific experience at the University of Strasbourg, which is, of course, an example of phenomena that are happening basically everywhere. And I'm very happy that we are all coming together here to share these experiences between different countries, and I hope that in the future Ocean will make a good contribution in facilitating these exchanges, because obviously the different experiences with different solutions, and somehow we can learn from each other, and there's no point in reinventing the wheel when another country has, let's say, made progress on certain levels and has already found solutions which haven't even been tried out in another country. So reinventing the wheel makes no sense. So we will certainly, after this conference, have more occasions where we can exchange these very different experiences and learn from each other. At least this is, I think, should be the goal. And breaking the cycle of violence and silence, I think this is really what the motto should be, because what I've heard from the first presentation and yours is clearly that one of the major problems is that victims do not report what they experience, either because the process that's being offered to them is flawed or not well thought of, or for other reasons. So breaking that barrier, this is, I think, certainly key to success. So thank you very much for this presentation. We are now coming to our third case study. I hope she's online. So we are now listening to a presentation by Dr. Elena Brodeala from Romania, currently still based at the University of Zurich in Switzerland. And she's a postdoctoral researcher involved in a project on normativity of human reproduction. So I hope she's there.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
She is there. So Dr. Brodeala, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me. I'm very sorry for not being able to be with you in person. I'm very sadly ill, but I'm very happy, and I want to thank particularly Daniela, but also Francesco for making it possible that I present online. I'm just gonna share.
Excuse me. Can we hear everybody? Can everybody hear her well?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you? Is it okay? Should I? Yeah. Can you hear me well? I think I cannot hear you. Okay. Is it okay?
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
wonderful.
So in the
So
beginning,
I
it
will
was a
just-
bit difficult to understand, but we have now raised the volume. It's okay.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much for having me. I will change a little bit the direction. I don't know if you can see my slides. Perhaps I will try to share again. 1 minute. I think the sharing has stopped. Sorry for this. Okay. So I will change a little bit the direction of our presentations. Of course, the Istanbul Convention imposes obligations to undertake gender-sensitive educations, and we've seen two examples of good practice, but also challenges in implementing these obligations. In the case of Romania, I think, complements very well the discussions that you had today on the resistance to the Istanbul Convention. And this being said, in Romania, particularly in law school, gender-sensitive education initiatives are currently developed. However, we encounter serious attacks from conservative actors. And my talk today will discuss the role of the Istanbul Convention in countering these attacks. And just a little outline of my presentation, I just want to give a little bit of background of the Istanbul Convention in Romania and the resistance to it. And then I will go to really discuss the question of gender education. And I will conclude with a few reflections on the Romanian case as regards the role of the Istanbul Convention in countering attacks to gender-sensitive education. And just to start with, here's a picture with the signature of the Istanbul Convention in 2014 by Romania. Romania ratified the convention in May 2016. It was a relatively smooth process. We did not have the resistance that we've seen in other countries in the region, for example, in Poland, in Hungary, in Bulgaria, and so on. However, the situation was about to change 1-2 years after the ratification, and this has to do mostly with the anti-gender movement in Romania. The anti-gender movement basically brings together different actors that are not concerned only about the Istanbul Convention. They contest several gender equality and LGBT rights policies, but also other issues that have to do with vaccination, homeschooling, and so on. And I think the so-called war on what they call gender ideology started in 2018, and this had to do with a few educational activities in Romania that were meant to raise awareness about gender inequalities, but also violence, gender-based violence, and also a draft strategy for parenting education. So the Ministry of Education in Romania wanted to implement a strategy to educate parents about gender equality and gender-based violence so they could further educate their children. In that moment, conservative actors starting attacking not only these initiatives, but claiming that, in fact, the evil comes from the Istanbul Convention. And it's an interesting turn of events. I want to mention that these actors are mostly transnational actors, and there is a picture here on my slides with a lawyer of ADF International, that's Alliance Defending Freedom. It's an American evangelical organization that operates at the EU, at the Council of Europe, United Nations, and in different states. They have Romanian lawyers that have been very vocal. So this picture is taken from a TV show in these questions, and of course, their objections to the Istanbul Convention in relation to education, I summarize them here on a slide based on their public interventions. Of course, the first is defining gender as a social construct and obligation to eradicate gender stereotypes that, in their view, would encourage students to become homosexual or transgender. They also argue that the Istanbul Convention would breach the rights of parents to educate their children according to their religious and philosophical beliefs, particularly due to the Article 14 that asks for teaching material to include information on non-stereotyped gender roles. Another objection has to do with religious freedom. And interestingly, I don't know if this was discussed already yesterday, they had an objection to Article 42 and Article 42 says that culture, custom, religion, tradition, and so-called honor shall not be regarded as justification for gender-based violence, but they say that this should be interpreted broadly, because in fact the Istanbul Convention imposes an obligation to eradicate all types of gender stereotypes. So they say here, for example, we might be obliged one day to have women priests, to desegregate toilets, and so on. And they also claim that the Istanbul Convention, and this is also one of their arguments, discriminates against men and in fact introduces stereotypes about men as aggressors in the educational system. And of course, their biggest enemy, to say so, is Grevio, and that they see as encroaching on national sovereignty. And just to go to the question of gender education more broadly in Romania, that is mostly discussed under Article 14 of the Istanbul Convention, it is to be mentioned here that as Grevio observed in its first baseline evaluation report on Romania from 2022, that gender studies remained underdeveloped in Romania, and so are topics related to equality between men and women. So in fact, these attacks to education in Romania are really preemptive attacks, and they are often related to, as I mentioned, concerns about the traditional family and the whole misinformation campaign. And these attacks for us culminated in 2020 with a proposed law to ban any type of gender education. And we know that there were similar initiatives, for example, in Hungary. However, the Romanian ban was much broader. In fact, the Romanian ban covered gender education, research in any type of institution or educational setting, being at the workplace, in universities, in kindergarten, and so on. And basically, this legislative proposal was meant to ban what they call gender identity theory or opinion. And this theory or opinion was defined as the one according to which gender is a concept that is different from biological sex. So contravening the definition of gender in the Istanbul Convention. What is very worrisome was that it was adopted by the parliament, but it was referred by the president to the Constitutional Court, who claimed, among others, that such a piece of legislation would breach Romania's obligations under Article 6 and 14 of the Istanbul Convention. And of course, this gave rise to a big public debate in Romania on gender education. There has been a lot of misinformation from the side of the anti-gender movement. However, the Romanian Constitutional Court declared this proposed ban unconstitutional, and it's a great decision in which they also very much legitimized and used the Istanbul Convention, unlike constitutional courts in other countries in the region, particularly Bulgaria. And it's very interesting. They do rely particularly on Article 3 and 12 of the Istanbul Convention, because the Romanian Constitutional Court wanted to enter into this definition of gender to see whether it's a social construct or not, and we can debate more about this choice. However, they do not mention anything, for example, about CEDAW, the Convention for the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. This is a legal instrument that was ratified by Romania already in 1982, and it also has an obligation to eliminate any type of cultural or traditional practices that would perpetuate gender prejudices or stereotypes. But this was not mentioned. The Istanbul Convention was at the center of this decision. And the Romanian Constitutional Court, as I said, I have it here on the slide, they define gender as well as a social construct with a wider scope than that of sex, sexuality in a strict biological sense. And if I were to reflect a little bit on the Romanian case, I will keep my presentation a bit short because of my throat. But interestingly, unlike CEDAW, so the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, the Istanbul Convention became an instrument for social debate and change in Romania. It's an instrument, and I am researching gender questions in Romania since 2010, so 13 years. And I can say that it's just recently that the population, but also law professors and scholars became interested in these questions of gender. And I think this has to do with the conservative groups that created awareness around it. In social science research, we call this backlash when actors create an effect that it's actually contrary to what they intended. So in this moment, and I think this is one of the explanations for which the Romanian Constitutional Court relied on the Istanbul Conventions, but not on CEDAW, and we have reports from CEDAW that shows that the convention is mostly unknown in Romania, is not used by the courts, and so on. And from the Romanian case, another thing that we can conclude is that the Istanbul Convention gives independent state institutions the tools to resist conservative attacks, as it was the case of the Romanian Constitutional Court. And I underlined here independent, in the sense that I think one reason for this decision of the Romanian Constitutional Court is that although we have rule of law challenges in Romania, the court is not packed, is not taken over by conservative actors, as we see, for example, in the case of Poland. And very interestingly, we had an unprecedented mobilization of NGOs, including women's NGOs, LGBT, but also NGOs concerned about violence against women that shook hands and intervened, sent amicus briefs before the Romanian Constitutional Court, which is unprecedented in Romania. And the Istanbul Convention, in this case, was a valuable advocacy tool, also to educate the court about Romania's obligation under the Istanbul Convention. I look forward to hearing your reflections, and I thank you very much for your attention, and please do get in touch with me. I put my email address here, and I look forward to hearing any of your comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brodeala, for sharing with us your insights regarding to the Romanian case, which is certainly comparable in many ways with other cases such as Bulgaria, probably Croatia, etc. I think the lines of discussion and also the front lines within the societies are in many cases very similar, and it's so good to hear from you that the Istanbul Convention is a tool that is really strengthening not only civil society but also state actors committed to the Istanbul Convention, and to basically shift the discussion within the society to hopefully a better future. And as we know, sometimes elections also make a difference, as we have seen most recently in Poland. Best of luck for your career. I see you have a Yale address and you're now at Zurich, and I think you're moving on to somewhere else again. So I hope you will stabilize that situation and we will hear more from you. So we have heard three really inspiring presentations now, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So I think we have to give the microphone around. So who will start with the questions? There's a question over there from our colleague from Kazakhstan. Over there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jansulu. As you know, I'm a PhD student from Astana, Kazakhstan, and I have a question about the factor of victim blaming. I don't know if it is relevant in your studies and research, but in Kazakhstan, And as I know, for the whole region, the factor of victim blaming is very essential in a sense of this concerning statistics that he showed us, that students do not want to inform the university, they drop classes and just do not to face their perpetrators, and in order, because they're afraid of that judgment that will appear in the society around them. And that factor, unfortunately, is one of the main reasons why the person who had that experience, they do not share it because of that, well, victim blaming. How does it reflect it in your research, and is it essential factor in the statistics? Thank you.
Thank you. I would say we take maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then we open the floor for the responses.
Thank you. My name is Kasia Sęgowska-Kozłowska. I'm from Poland, and I have some other, maybe more comment than questions, especially related to Elena's presentation. Thank you very much for that. And I see many parallels with Poland, so this is definitely the case with CEDAW in Poland, that it's really invisible. So it makes me thinking that, what is your opinion about all this, how to say, I have feeling that if not all these stupid debates and comments that we have around the Istanbul Convention, maybe it would be another European Council of Europe treaty that we really have many of them, and as far as I was researching some of them, they are really like very unknown. So I was wondering, and of course Istanbul Convention was established in different times than CEDAW, but I was wondering if it not happens like that, all these gender campaigns, do you feel that maybe Istanbul Convention would be as much invisible as any other convention? Of course, in the legal sense, they are important, and they did a lot of important things. But in social conscious and attitudes and in minds of people, usually people they don't know many about human rights treaties. And this one, the Istanbul Convention, is a really exceptional one. Everyone knows about it, at least in Poland. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So there's a 3rd question, and then I would like to stop and give the floor to the presentators.
Monika Platek, I'm also from Poland, and my question is both to Elena and to 2 of you. What struck me when you were saying that this people who are attacking the convention are stressing that, for example, Grevio is encroaching on national sovereignty, but they themselves represent international organization. What is the tactics and strategy to deal with them? And the question to French and British English representative, do you have this kind of arguments that convention is against the family value, promoting gender ideology and promoting LGBT community movement, or is it already impossible, and what happened? Why isn't possible? What has to happen to stop it? Because this is discrimination in itself, really, that is promoted by the governmental bodies.
Thank you very much. So who of the speakers would like to start answering? Anne-Laure, would you like to start?
Sure, I can start. First of all, the question of victim blaming. This is the typical thing that we see. We see victim blaming at many different levels, and therefore I would just say that what is really important is to make sure that all actors that will deal with the incidents are trained. And that could be sorry. Okay. Sorry, is that better? So So I was saying, it's just, I don't think this is nothing new. We know this already. It's just really stating the obvious, is making sure that all the actors at different levels in our institutions are trained on how to deal with the cases. So that is the people that will be on the ground dealing with the cases, but that will also be the people that will be making the decision about the cases later on. And here I'm thinking usually it's just higher up in the leadership command. I think it's really also important to make sure that there is total confidentiality into how this is handled, because very often the victim blaming, the fear of being blamed as a victim, comes from the fear of being identified. And what we also see is a lot of fear of being blamed by the people around us. That could be students in our courses, so that's why it's important for confidentiality to be there, but it could also be a fear of the judgment that we may get from our friends, our families, and so on. So just having really support mechanisms that are there in place so that people just feel empowered and believe, have confidence and trust that the system is going to be there for them, rather than the horrendous responses that we sometimes see. Resulting in the very, very low reporting that we've experienced. I mean, you asked about statistics. I don't have them to hand, but in the UNICEF survey, we see that we have very low reporting of the incidents that were disclosed by the respondents, on the order of about 12%, if I remember correctly, though that is much, much lower for students than for staff. But these numbers are available on the website and in the publications of it. So if you wanted to have a look at the reasons why staff and students were not reporting, then you would have a breakdown of these figures at European level. And then I will respond quickly to the interesting questions about the discourses on conventions. I work mostly with two conventions, just like Istanbul Convention, but I also work quite extensively with the ILO Convention 190, which is about safety from violence in the world of work. And it's just really surprising, just listening to the questions, surprising to see that the Istanbul Convention is being debated in some countries, but the ILO Convention 190, I don't know if maybe people hear some controversial things about him. I don't think it's known outside of people that know. So it's just really interesting to reflect as to why those conventions are just triggering different reactions. And if I may guess why that could be the case, I think the Istanbul Convention is really challenging social norms and gender norms. And that's why we see a backlash. It's because actually it's quite effective. It has the potential to be quite effective. It's disrupting the status quo. So I just think it's worth remembering that, and just remember that if it is creating resistance, it means that it is starting to effect change. In the UK, we don't see much about this. We have about Istanbul or any other conventions. We have other big debates about, for example, I'm not going to go into this, but for example, about the extent to which just holding gender-critical beliefs is an acceptable position or not.
Okay, thank you. And so next respondent is Anna Mattioli and then Elena Boreal.
Regarding victim blaming, I think that explained that there is not a lot of reports inside university, but we have to say that there is not a lot of reports in the outside university. So I think there is a lot of stereotype about victim that don't permit the report. One solution, I think it's a real culture of prevention and of violence against women in universities. And in France, it's new. It's only in 2019 that a legal obligation appears. And there is a lot of resistance about this. So I think that university has to make progress about this, but all the society, because it's the same system in university and outside university. And I said in my presentation that we have to think about some practical tools, and I'm very surprised that when you have to make a report, you have an anonymous mail in university, and I think it's a way to say don't make reports. So we have a lot of things to improve about the mechanism, and we have a big challenge, change all the stereotype about victim. And about Istanbul Convention, I think that in France, we have not resistance about this treaty. There is no resistance, but there is a movement anti-gender regarding including teaching material in primary and elementary school, and there is a lot of association who fight against this inclusion in teaching material, but they don't use the Convention of Istanbul. It's not an argument for these associations. And sorry for my French pronunciation.
Elena?
Yeah, thank you very much for these great questions. I'm going to go and comment a little bit about the Istanbul Convention being so known. And I agree with the other speakers that the Istanbul Convention is truly transformative. But so is CEDAW. I mean, Article 5, and I have it in front of me, says that states have an obligation to modify the social and cultural patterns of conduct of men and women with a view to achieving the elimination of prejudice and customary and all other practices which are based on the idea of the inferiority or the superiority of either of the sexes, or on the stereotype roles for men and women. I think what makes the difference in the Istanbul Convention, and we see this in Romania with the Istanbul Convention, but also with LGBT rights, are the conservative group agitation about it. And just to give you an example on LGBT rights, Romania is the last country in the EU to decriminalize homosexuality. And the first area that the conservatives decided to attack preventively was LGBT rights. They wanted to review the constitution to define marriages between a man and a woman. And this opened up a new debate in Romania that LGBT groups would have never got. They would have never got that much time on national television and so on. So that's why today, for example, we are discussing about introducing the civil partnership, because we had this debate. And that's the same with the Istanbul Convention. We do not have enough research to actually measure the impact about that. I did an interview in 2015 with the head of a far-right party in Romania. And I did ask them about the strategy, about gender, and at that time they told me that they prefer not to say anything about it because Romanians don't know, and they don't want them to know. So something happened in these 2 years with the Istanbul Convention, and I could say I have colleagues who are teaching gender studies in Bucharest, and they tell me that surprisingly they now really have students who are interested. There are people who are coming to the public talks that are organized at the University of Bucharest. And so it's an interesting, because on one hand, you're very worried about the attacks that you see and the misinformation around the Istanbul Convention. On the other hand, I can personally say that I see also positive outcomes from having this awareness and the public discussion that we would have never had otherwise. And about the question of national sovereignty, I think that's a really great question. And one of the things I learned from my research is that the strategy of these conservative groups is to tell Romania that, well, you are doing great. You're already very conservative, and please stay like that. Traditionally, especially when we joined Council of Europe, European Union, you would have these human rights reports showing how bad the human rights situation is in Romania. And now conservative actors from the United States, and especially I think this has to be analyzed in this context of post-colonialism, the Eastern European former communist countries looking towards the West. Now you had American actors that are coming and saying, well, you know, you have a high rate of marriage, not that as many divorces, you don't have LGBT marriage and so on. So they portray all this conversation as something that Romania, it's a great country. They have, as I said, they hire lawyers that are Romanian, and they are oftentimes Romanians who left during communism due to religious persecution. And they are now in the United States, so they are related to us. And it's very interesting because oftentimes they, this gender ideology promoted by the Istanbul Convention is often associated with the communist past. So we know during communism there have been huge efforts to promote gender equality, to take women to the factories and so on. So this was also portrayed something unnatural as an ideology. So that's why the Istanbul Convention in the local context is connected. They want to connect it with the struggle against communism. And, you know, and that's why, for example, when they fight against gender education, they call it gender re-education. Because during communism, we would call, you know, the political opponents will be sent to re-education, to re-educate them as communist citizens. And this is how they portray this and try to make it as a local struggle in Romania. And of course, the question of national sovereignty, this could be an argument that we could make about any other international body in the end, so not just about Grevio. But it's certainly something that has to be further researched and discussed into depth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have more questions? We're doing fine in time, so shoot away. Oh yeah, over there. Susanne Nodaft will start, and then we go on there. So we take another round of 3 questions.
It's just maybe a comment. Thank you, Elena, for putting it in a broader context, because sometimes my idea is, which I mentioned already yesterday, we might get onto a meta level concerning that the gender ideology discourse is only one marketplace of a bigger movement, who is, I would say, not only a trans-European, but a global strengthening of the new right. I would say they are very nationalist, they are very far-right, very conservative, and they have different issues which they make markable. And an anti-gender ideology is only one. It's pro-life, anti-choice, anti-abortion, homogeneous, nationalist society bodies. So there are a lot of issues. And I sometimes think Istanbul Convention just caters into one dimension of it. And we really want to tackle it. We have maybe to dig deeper and get a better understanding of what forces are working on that global level, because they are extremely well funded, they are extremely well connected, and if you dig into right-wing networks on a global scale, they are almost the same stakeholders popping up, either if you look pro-life, anti-abortion, or anti-ideology, or anti-sex education, or whatever. So maybe I think we should also discuss that there is a context of the new right, which feeds into, as one example, the anti-gender ideology. Thanks.
Thank you. There was a second question over there.
Hi, thank you very much. More than a question, is a concern that I have myself in relation with the role of the university in the fight against gender-related violence. I also have been working in different European and national projects on these topics, and also as a teacher, I have participated in different activity in order to visibilize the violence within the university and whatever. Nonetheless, my concern is that I see that university as institutional still struggling in order to acknowledge the roots of the gender-related violence, and sometimes what they do are more preservative action than real change. For instance, they are not making almost anything about the power position that is at the base of this violence within the university. So I'm wondering if we are not in some way working and helping university to do some kind of pink washing in relation with gender-related violence. So it's just a concern, and I would like to know your opinion about that, and also that this pink washing on the other side is in some way reinforcing the reaction of backlash and anti-feminism, because university seems to be feminist, and people that are against feminist seems to go against any action. We have some reaction of this kind in Barcelona too. So just to know your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a third question over there somewhere. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hello, my name is Ivana Krstic from the University of Belgrade. Thank you all for excellent presentations, and Elena, thank you for great observations that you had. I have a question for Anna Matteoli, because in 2019 also at the Belgrade University we started to introduce some internal mechanisms for the protection from discrimination and sexual violence, and we have a great debate on also the Commissioner for the Protection of Equality, which is the person that should be appointed at each faculty within the university. So we have a debate on who that person should be. So we have two let's say sides. One said that we should have someone who is a full professor, so someone who is coming from the teaching staff and from the highest ranking position, and you can assume why. And then we also have another side, another stream saying that we should have a person who is basically administrative staff. So my question to you is, who is that person at your faculty? And the second question, you had a very interesting survey, and you showed to us that even 50%, if I remember correctly, would not report the case of violence to that person. So I'm just wondering, do you have any reasons for that, why it is so? So thank you.
Thank you very much. I would say let's stop the questions at this point. Maybe for the answers we take the inverse order, and let's start with Elena.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the great comment on the context. It's true, context matters very much. And I think this is, for example, what in the Romanian context explains why ratification was such a smooth process. There was no contestation, because at that time we had no right-wing, far right-wing parties in the parliament. We have today a 10% in the parliament, or actors generally. And I think this is the big difference between Romania and the other countries in the region. And this is why we only had this debate in 2018, when this the new right started crystallizing. So I think this says a lot, and I think this is why this discussion and how they frame being against many issues, including communism, really has to do with the political ideology, and shows that in fact their opposition is not the substance of the Istanbul Convention, but it's a broader fear that they have on how this convention might transform gender relations. So I certainly very much agree with this comment, and I agree that the problem is much broader. And we still have very little research. I mean, we have some research to understand how these networks work, but there is still research to be done to fully understand how they operate and what's different in each context. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anna, you want to continue?
Yes, thank you for your question. It was a short presentation, so I didn't give a lot of details, but at level university in this unit, there is a health professional, lawyer and a psychologist, and there is also the possibility to go in an association approved by the university. The vice president have the politic responsibilities of this unit, but the victim is received by a professional. And at the Faculty of Law, it's a law lecturer. There is no administrative employees. and this person made a training and paid for this training with her own money. So I think there is a lot of progress to make in this process, but in my mind, it's better that it's a professional of health or law, and this professional must be trained. I think it's essential, and it's not always the case. I don't know if in your university the people are trained before taking the position, but in France it's not like that. And it can be very difficult for the people who receive the words of the victim, and it can be difficult for the victims.
Thank you. And Laure?
I will respond to the comment about pink washing, because I think it's a really important topic to discuss. I would be very concerned and worried if all the efforts that we are doing are only just pink washing. I think it's important to discuss it because it's a risk. And we've seen it in many other things that we've done. So many institutions have been engaging with certification systems on gender equality. So things like Athena Swan in the UK, but there are others. So total equality in Germany and so on. And again, just the extent to which this is just to get the certification or means a deeper engagement is questionable. However, I also see it as an opportunity and as a starting point to do something else, to just start addressing and talking about the problem. When I started doing the analysis of the UNICEF survey last year, I was very surprised because it's a survey that was done in 46 institutions and 15 countries, and I expected to see differences in the prevalence and the consequences of gender-based violence. And the analysis actually shows that there are very, very few differences. I was very surprised, and in fact, in just trying to theorize that, it just really speaks to that universal nature of gender-based violence in universities. A response to this, I think, needs to be an engagement of universities to do something about this. And here there is an opportunity. UNICEF, as a project, relied on a community of institutions that were engaged in learning and exchanging on how to address gender-based violence. The project itself is ending soon in January, but there is a new project, a follow-up project called Gender Safe that is going to start from March and run for 3 years. And that project is going to build on the idea of communities of practice. So here there is really an opportunity for your institution to become involved with that work and just feed into that, learn from other actors and stakeholders in what's happening, and hopefully make sure that we are doing far, far better than just pink washing, and that we really address gender-based violence.
Thank you. Do we still have questions? If there are no more questions, I get a sign that we should conclude the session. Thank you very much, all three of you, for these really good presentations, and of course for engaging in this discussion. So shall we continue, Marina, directly? Yes? Yes, okay. So we will continue directly with the next round table. Thank you very much. And okay, allow for a minute until we are ready. Okay, we will now continue with our last roundtable of today under the heading of Building Academic Networks, Teaching, Research, Third Mission. And we have two speakers in that round table. One is unfortunately not able, she was meant to be here, she's unfortunately not able to come personally, but she has sent us a pre-recorded presentation, which I think we are ready to show now. Let me quickly introduce her. This presentation will be given by Dr. Renate Klein, who's working for the European Network on Gender and Violence at the University of Maine in the United States. So she's a little almost like an antenna, I hope so, at least in the future, of ocean overseas. She's a research psychologist by training, and she's also a founding member of the UK-based network Universities Against Gender-Based Violence. So, Marina, we will start with her. Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Are we ready? Yeah, okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Renate in Maine, the broken kneecap. And I am very sorry that I cannot be with you in person, but I thank you for making it possible for me to contribute to the conference in this way. The conference is about academic networks, in particular in relationship to issues of violence against women and gender-based violence in the Istanbul Convention. And in that context, I'm going to say a little bit about the European Network on Gender and Violence, which also is an academic network and also concerns violence against women, gender-based violence. There is the web address of the network. It's just a very small website for basic orientation. I'm going to say a little bit about the origins of the network, its purpose, organization, and membership, the conference we hold, the network's longevity, and my wish list for the future. The origins. It really started in 1996 with a small seminar at a conference at Banff in Canada. We focused on European perspectives on domestic violence, really a little bit as a counterweight to the over-dominance of United States perspectives on many things in the social sciences. There were eventually 4 participants from Europe, 1 each from Denmark, France, Germany, and Poland. And we had 2 discussants from the United States. It was a nice event, and the German participant, Carol Hagemann-White, said that she would like to organize something similar the next year in Germany. So in 1997, we met in Germany, organized by the University of Osnabrück. We had about 30 participants from more different countries, and then kept meeting almost every year, going next to Sweden, to Stockholm, then to Strasbourg, working with the Council of Europe, and many different places that you can see when you go to the website. There were a couple of breaks during a larger European project. We took a hiatus, a pause. We didn't have conferences during the COVID years. The most recent conference was last year at the University of Wolverhampton. The purpose really was, from the beginning, first of all, to bring together a variety of different perspectives on the origins of violence against women and intervention strategies. Perspectives from different disciplines and also perspectives from different countries and cultural contexts, because each of us work predominantly, or most of us work predominantly within one framework, one national framework, or predominantly one cultural context. And so it is good to see what it's like in other contexts and to exchange ideas and information about that. Another purpose from the beginning was to connect individuals working on violence against women and to overcome their isolation. I think at the time, at least, there were many individuals, many scholars, who were the only ones at the institutions to work on topics of violence against women or gender-based violence or domestic violence, and that can be a position of isolation and loneliness. And so it's important to make connections with other people in similar situations. And then, of course, another purpose was to serve as a springboard for joint projects, such as the Coordination Action on Human Rights Violations by the University of Osnabrück. The network is completely informal, really. There's no membership fee, and that was a deliberate decision. And one was to remove any financial hurdles to access the network, regardless of somebody's budget. It also meant that we didn't have to set up an administrative structure to manage money across multiple countries. So that meant no money, no budget, and no administrative expenses. The activities of the network on one hand flow through an information exchange that is a listserv at the University of Maine, and the kind of information is really very academic things like announcements of conferences, of new publications, books, journal articles, queries about topics. Does anybody know anything about this form of violence against women in such and such country? Or requests for participants. I have a student who needs participants, or I'm looking for people who want to participate in such and such topic. The other major way of networking is through the annual conferences, about which I'll say a little bit more in a minute. As I said early on, we started out with basically 5 people, and now the membership is a little over 500. Most of them are academics, researchers. Most are based in Europe. There are a few representatives from NGOs, and maybe a few practitioners or policymakers, but it's mostly academic. So about the conferences, we rely really on volunteers to host a conference, and usually that is a university or an NGO. In 2017, it was Milano Bicocca, and the host is Marina Coloni and her colleagues, and it was a wonderful conference. It had a very interesting academic program and delightful social and cultural program with art and wonderful food. So it was really very, very nice. The conference rotates around Europe, like many academic conferences do. That they rotate. I think it's important to do that rather than have a conference always in the same place, because that makes access easier for people in the region where the conference takes place. It's sort of, the conference comes to them, and so they don't have to go to the conference. And we always showcase research in the host country during one section of the conference. Over the past few years, we have had one day set aside for early career researchers only. Those are mostly PhD students, sometimes a master's students or postdoc. And they get together and talk about their work in progress. And the point of it is to have a sort of relaxed atmosphere, maybe a little less intimidating than a formal conference. And they can talk about work in progress and don't need to feel as though they had to present final finished results. And this Early Career Researchers Day is organized by Ksenia Meshkova. Last but not least, I must say that it's hope that the conferences achieve a friendly atmosphere, a friendly and relaxed atmosphere, because I think it is very important to have that in order to talk a little more openly and unguardedly about difficult and potentially controversial topics. So, coming to the end, the longevity, a little bit about the longevity about the network. It's almost 30 years old. That's relatively old. Why is it still going on? I think on one hand, because the demand continues for connection amongst researchers after all these years. Another reason is we cannot lose external funding because we don't have any. We do rely on dedicated volunteers. Right now, this is myself and Monika Schreutler at University Weingarten Ravensbrück in southern Germany, Ksenia Meshkova at Humboldt University in Germany, and Bianca Grafe at the University of Osnabrück. It happens to be all German universities, but that's coincidental. That was not necessarily planned. And very important, in particular for our series of conferences, is the collaborative spirit of those who sponsor the conferences. The universities, the NGOs, sometimes municipalities. It is really important, and it's encouraging to see that kind of spirit has been going on for so long, year after year. And I do hope that the added value of exposure to different perspectives also contributes to the longevity of the network. My wishes for the future is to keep going like this, to become perhaps a bit more diverse. It's a very white network, and it's geographically still dominated by Western Europe over Eastern Europe. It used to be Northwestern Europe, but over the past few years, we have had so many people join from Italy, from Spain, from Portugal. It's been wonderful to see. And I hope that the network can contribute to a better understanding of locally specific expressions of violence against women and locally specific skills, resources, constraints, and opportunities. If you would like to get in touch, send me an informal email to that email address shown there. Thank you for your attention. Thank you again for making it possible for me to contribute in this way to your conference. Again, I'm very sorry that I could not be there with you in person, and I hope that we can continue the conversation another time in the near future. Thank you. Have a good rest of the conference, and goodbye.
Well, even though she cannot hear me and you, thank you very much, Renate Klein, for this interesting example of a network that goes back 30 years. That's outstanding, and all the best wishes for the future. We now continue with Professor Marina Caloni.
Okay, so my presentation, and for us is a very important alliance with the with this network, and we started also, we participate in several also in initiatives. So my presentation, I have to say that at the end of this conference, I have always a sense of powerlessness, because I read in the newspaper today 2 women in Italy were killed by their partner, so domestic violence, and it cannot be a normality. Every day we read this news. Also, Armita Garavand died, was the young lady was beaten in Iran by the police because she did not wear the veil. Women are still raped in war, but we should still have hope. So at least what we can do also just in terms of awareness and prevention. And it is also a little the aim of the Unire network. So I started from the challenge, the transformation of the university system, which has to face many challenges in a global horizon. The issue of gender-based violence, sexual and domestic, represents a new challenge because until a few years ago, as we know, this topic was underestimated or even unknown in academia, and professors had to learn also from anti-violence center and so on. So we had to have such a behavior of humility, because we didn't know really what was going on. The knowledge of this phenomenon so highlights a new task for the university as a complex institution, because it is composed by different social actors, students, professors, researchers, personnel, but also workers. So university, we have many different tasks. We have not only teaching, training, administration, research, but nowadays, as we heard in many presentations, we have also services and anti-harassment programs, and we have to harmonize also these programs. So it has a new meaning of well-being on campus in connection with local agencies and collaboration with national and international institutions. So we need a new alliance between multiple social, political, and professional actors involved, thanks to a holistic, integrated, and intersectional approach in a dialogue between different but interacting forms of disciplines in a renewed knowledge society. So a legitimate, so is my philosophical part, political and social, a legitimate democracy is based on the continuous interaction between institutions, expert associations of the civil society, and the education training systems with the aim at developing capabilities, collective and individual capabilities, and also the expertise of citizens and professionals in a society where radical changes are undergoing and where the struggle against all forms of violence, discrimination, intolerance, and hate speech in a digital age, because we see that it's not decreasing violence against women, but we have a new form of violence, not only sexual, psychological, economic, and physical, but also we have digital violence or cyber violence. So it has become now a major issue for the state. Within this frame, the engagement of scholars has become crucial. So within this frame also is the constitution of the network Unire, which is an academic network, as you well know, which has the aim at functioning as a tool that becomes a collector of knowledge and experiences in the both academia and civil society in order to prevent gender-based violence thanks to innovative and challenging forms of cross-border cooperation, as the present conference intends to be. A network can be conceived as a persistence and immanent transformation of the previous tradition of women's international movement, thanks to the employment of new telematic means that permits contact at a distance. A network makes possible flexible and extraterritorial associations with transformative potentialities, with the intent, with the aim at challenging both traditional and new forms of prejudices, stereotypes, and discrimination, due also to the misuse or abuse of informative means. Establishing, this also is the aim of our network, praxis of deliberative and participatory democracy, starting from mutual information, comparative analysis, exchange of good practices, and the development of new initiatives and projects. So giving natality to new projects, as Hanara would say. The present conference is aimed at contributing to strengthening immanent transformative knowledge potentialities, I say, in a global society thanks to a networking praxis. The implementation of the Istanbul Convention, especially in terms of prevention and risk assessment, has become a fundamental turning point for the renewal of the university system, mainly in relation to teaching, training, research, data collection, as mentioned also yesterday's Grevio president, increasing social and cultural awareness and cross-border cooperation. A network makes possible flexible, as said before, association. So information, so the present conference is aimed at contributing to strengthen, as said, these potentialities. Briefly, some information about the origin and functioning of UNIRE in order to share our activities and the results which that may inspire the constitution of further networks. We are, of course, at disposal. The initial idea of the project UNIRE originated in the context of the prize for the best master's and doctoral thesis on topic related to Istanbul Convention. It was promoted in 2015 by the Italian delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, chaired by then President Michele Nicoletti, who was honorable member of the Chamber of Deputies at the Italian Parliament. Considering the potential of this initiative, the scientific committee of this prize decided to develop a more insightful national project, participating in a public call. The project was financed by the Department of Equal Opportunities at the Presidency of the Council of Ministers in Rome for a duration of 18 months. So UNIRE started actually in 2018 and finished in June 2020 in terms of financing, and then I say the problem of funds. The UNIRE project was developed thanks to the fruitful cooperation of 10 grounding research units with Milano Bicocca as a leading partner, the participation of universities from different, we choose Italian regions, North, Central, and South, and scholars with different disciplinary and scientific expertise, but also the scholars were already engaged in social and women's movements, so very much active in civil society. UNIRE works has been mainly based on the interest in implementing specific parts of the Istanbul Convention, referring to collection of data, education, training, and research, I say again. In particular, we took as reference 5 articles. Article 11, data collection and research. 12, general obligation. 13th, awareness raising. 14th, education. 15, training of professional as an obligatory issue. Consequently, the project was focused on 4 main areas of intervention, but 5 because we have also the international collaboration. We produced 2 books until now. So one is at the end of the project financed by the ministry, by the Department of Equal Opportunity in Rome, and this is a book, The Role of the University in Combating Gender-Based Violence, was published in 2020, and it collects the projects the 10 units have developed. And then also we have a book because we organize a conference at the Senate of the Italian Republic and with the commission, Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry on Femicide, and we published, these are our books. And if you want to see, we have, they are, the second book is online because it was published by the Senate of the Italian Republic. And we were very thankful also to the former president of the commission, Senatrice Valeria Valente, who gave us the possibility for that. So the website of UNIRE, we have a website quite rich nowadays. We have a newsletter, which 2 times in a month, Dr. Daniela Belliti send to our indirizzario. We publish all initiatives of our members, and so you can see how many we have done, and our important members, not only the 10 funding units, but also people who are sharing with us the interest of networking. And then is the email in case you want to ask us something, but Daniela answered in a very kind way to all questions during the last weeks, but we hope to have new engaging emails after this conference. According, these are what we have done is the organization of activities, the collection, elaboration of data, because thanks to the collaboration with the conference of the rectors of the Italian university, we gather also all the information about what is going on in university, courses, research, and so on. Nowadays we should do a new collection, but it was very important to see that it was very rich. There were many projects and activities, but they were not coordinated. So our aim was just to coordinate and harmonize different activities. So we started also, we cooperate with schools, civil society association, anti-violence centers, but also professional orders, because with the courses we are doing, also they need also this professional, so to say, updating, and local agency, international institutions, municipalities, and also we work with regions. In our case, a project Sfera for the Regione Lombardia, and was thanks also to Anna Gadda. And so we have a national institution, so we work with Chamber of Deputies, Senate of the Republic, Parliamentary Commission on Inquiry on Femicide, and have you seen Ministry of University and Research, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Justice, Minister for Equal Opportunities, and you see the intervention in the book we publish, it was published at the Senate. And then also thanks to other experience, we also collaborated, participated, thanks to the Minister of University, who was a former rector of the University of Milano Bicocca, Cristina Messa. We had the possibility also to write in the National Strategic Plan on Male Violence Against Women, which this year will last, also some important information about university and what university should do. Then we have worked actively also with the Authority for Communications Guarantees, AGCOM, because they need also our support against some, so to say, offensive and, just to help this authority against something that did not work in the public communication or broadcasting and so on. European institutions, we collaborate with the European Parliament, before with beloved David Sassoli, who died, was a former Italian president, and now also with the Vice President Pina Picerno, and I read her message yesterday. With the Council of Europe, of course, Ocean Program, we met as the Grevio President, remember yesterday, also the Grevio expert in 2019, and after this we also draft a document which is published, comments and recommendation for the Grevio delegation. So as I said, the Grevio president, we did already our task, so to say homework, and just saying what was not going, what was wrong in the university. But recently, also thanks to our colleagues who are working in law, in the law sector, also we, other colleagues of the network, we published on the Grevio page comments and recommendations on the responses provided by the Italian authorities to the committee, because it was addressed to the monitor mechanism of the Istanbul Convention, because the Italian report was not at all satisfactory. So it has also been published. Then we had also an audit by the Culture and Cultural Heritage at the Assembly of the Council of Europe at the Chamber of Deputies in Rome. What we can say, what we learn, because I remember when we finished our project, I thought that all colleagues were tired, and so while it was at the end, all colleagues, we were very energetic, because we learned to work together. Was a process of mutual and continuous learning process, which gave birth to something new. And so we want, we can perhaps our experience can be of inspiration for our networks. Some features for further networks, perhaps the fact to refer to the article of the Istanbul Convention. And this kind of academic network have many benefits. Benefits for the university system, because it's a synergic also method, collaboration among academics and of different disciplines, cooperation with local authorities, we say third mission, and then harmonization of services, which will be our next step, that is to have in all university, as before we talk about the trusted counselors, and also information desk against violence, what students call peer violence or chair violence. Peer violence between, students. Chair violence, it is when there is a power relationship. Strengthening university networks, new specialized educational and scientific areas, and formation of new researchers, increasing research by students, PhD thesis, and curricular courses. We are able in Bicocca to have curricular courses interdisciplinary, and it is here it is, so to say, organized by Giorgia Serughetti and by myself, and all students of the third year of the, of our courses, but also master courses can attend it. So we are very happy. Then we have also done intra-professional training courses in cooperation with the respective orders, professional orders. I directed a project called Sfera, supported by the region Lombardy, and in 1 year we trained 1,800 professionals. That is Carabinieri and Polizia di Stato, local police, anti-violence centers, social and health care, then workers, psychologists, social workers, counter, and then the technical work in court, journalists, teachers, and school principal. And so this was, now we'll do the same for the region Valle d'Aosta. Benefits for governments, implementation of signed conventions, contribution to the establishment of more respectful societies, impact on social policies, and development or research, advocacy, initiative, monitoring, collection of data. Benefits for international collaboration. A holistic method of cooperation between different social actors can have an important impact at the international level or European level, as stressed by collaborative projects we have seen also in this room yesterday and today. And then, of course, the academic help is the ocean aim, helping in research, data collection, reports, and guidelines. The crucial issue of funding. We were supported, but mainly then, after that, we used our financial support for research for each unit. So it, as the president of the Grevio said, we need also to have more supporting, but not just for supporting individuals, but also individuals and groups in order to organize national or cross-national projects. Because sometimes what we say in our research was that there are many very small projects that finish when the money finishes. So this is what we propose next. This afternoon we'll have a meeting with founding units and future initiatives and new also colleagues interested in joining UNIRE. Demonstration of interest, because we would like to know who are interested, how we can improve our activities, because we need also new energies. And our aim is also step by step to include all Italian university as interested scholars, and we see to constitute a new national alliance among universities. So we are only at the beginning. This conference is only the beginning of a shared European experience, and not only European. So I think that networking is a fundamental practice for a reciprocal empowerment and learning process. So we should start. And I want to just, because we had so tragic news, I want to end my presentation with a Bernard Shaw sentence about dreams, or Tagenträume, as Ernst Bloch would say. It means dreams with open eyes. And Bernard Shaw wrote, "You see things, you say why, but I dream things that never were, and I say, why not?" We have a common concrete dream as a feminist resilient utopianism, I would say, has taught us through the centuries. Change? Yes, I think. We can do it, but only if we do it together. Thank you. Grazie per la vostra attenzione. Arrivederci presto.
Thank you very much, Marina, for giving us this in-depth introduction into the work of UNIRE. I think UNIRE is really a role model for maybe also other countries. I mean, you have done fantastic work, not only in giving it a structure and filling it with activities, but also to secure the funding over the years. And I think we will hear a lot from you, UNIRE, and I think it's really something that's hopefully being emulated by other countries. So we still have 5 minutes for questions?
Yes.
Yes, of course. Okay. So there's a question over here.
Thank you. Just quick question to Olaf and Marina. Thank you for organizing. Yes, my name is Kasia Sankowska-Kozłowska. I'm from Poland. Thank you for organizing this event and gathering us in the network, and I hope that this international cooperation on Istanbul Convention will be developed. But of course, without financial means, it's really terribly to do international networking. And my question is, if you considered applying for cost action and this kind of networking, have you considered applying for cost action means and this kind of funding for international networking around the Istanbul Convention? Thank you.
Just to say that we did a proposal 1 year ago. It's not been yet financed. Was for the Italian public. Sorry, I'm very tired. Sorry, I apologize. For equal opportunity, we wait for the result, but it's a good idea. We have to try to remember it. We'll do it. Thank you. Yeah. I know the program. I did it for another project, but we have in the last month, we have to think just to recompose at the national level UNIRE and then to organize this conference. So next step, we'll make the cost action just to write as the next. So you are all invited then. We have a very good network, and then with Daniela, we'll try to summarize also the university present and also the states. Daniela, how many states did we have? Many, 10 more. Yeah, all Europe. So I mean many, and then we have also we have also Brazil, the colleague from Brazil, Kazakhstan, and online from Canada, and so on. So it's the network is increased. So we'll try to also to figure out how big was the cover of this conference. And yes, I was told that we had 7,000 viewers during our plenary.
Any other questions? No more questions, then I would call on Professor Nicoletti to come up to the podium, and I think we are ready to wrap up. Okay, Michaela will start. Okay. You want to do it from there? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine, thank you. So at the end of this conference, I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Calloni and Daniela Belliti for the great efforts and not only in the preparation of this conference, but as you have seen in all the preparatory work for UNIRE, which is an excellent example of cooperation at academic level around a convention of the Council of Europe. And thank you also, Marina, for this very inspiring conclusion. So I would like just to say a few words from my side, from point of view of the Ocean Project, and certainly Olaf will say something from his part. I was really impressed from the high quality of this conference. The contributions were really excellent, and this was really inspiring for our work as Ocean Project. We are on the right track. The atmosphere was great, was very friendly, as Renate Klein reported about the atmosphere of other conferences, and we had a great audience also. Maybe Marina or Olaf will say something about the people who followed us yesterday, not only here in this plenary assembly, but also in internet. There is still a little gender imbalance because we need to have more men discussing about violence against women, and this is something that we have to work on. My first invitation to all of you is to consider seriously to become a member of Ocean. There is a simple form that you can use and fill on the website. It is free, and the only thing that we ask our members is to organize at least one event per year focused on one activity of the Council of Europe. And we are ready to support you. For example, if you want to invite somebody about the Istanbul Convention, we can cooperate with the Grevio or so on. Or if you would like to organize a seminar or a conference, we do not have resources, but we can work together in order to get some funds for that. Second point, please think at this good example of UNIRE and see if at your national level something similar is possible. To contact your friends and colleagues who work in the field of Istanbul Convention and so on, and just look if they are interested in create something like a national or regional network focused on this convention. In July, we had a wonderful summer school at the Liverpool University. And we are looking for other universities interested in organizing summer schools or winter schools or graduate conference at European level focused on Istanbul Convention or the other convention of the Council of Europe. And if you is a huge effort to do that, but if you have any idea to organize this kind of event, we are ready to discuss with you and possibly to support. seminars. I think that many things that we have discussed need to be discussed and analyzed more in depth. Yesterday there was a discussion about the contradiction or some ambiguity about the usage of this term gender within the Istanbul Convention. I think that a scientific workshop on this topic would be very interesting. And I think that we can support this kind of initiative. Scientific discussion about a specific topic. Then we really invite you to think and propose joint research project. This is a very good strategy for looking for some funds. Usually every year the European Union, in the framework of the Horizon program, support networks of universities working on human rights or women's rights. It is a big work, 1 month, 2 months writing a project, but you can use this network and you can use the partnership of the Council of Europe, which is good for the dissemination part, which is obviously important for European projects. Then the network could be useful for joint programs for students or professionals. And also we invite all the members to propose the students to write a master thesis or a PhD thesis on the Istanbul Convention and its implementation. And we are thinking at the possibility of having a European prize for the best dissertation on the Istanbul Convention. This does not need a lot of money. We can create a kind of scientific committee at European level with experts like you, who can evaluate the thesis and dissertation, and then we can give this award to the best dissertation and support his or her publication. Policy recommendations. This is a key point, and I already mentioned yesterday, we need to make our work very concrete. So both at European level and national level, we need to tell the Council of Europe what can be improved in the Convention and in the implementation. Ideas for the publications. I think that there have been a lot of very good ideas in this 2 days conference, and maybe we can think at possible publications coming from this event or other events through our journals or book series or other instruments that we all have. And finally, the idea of creating a European academic network on the Istanbul Convention. You have heard the very good practice of the UNIRE. And if some of you are ready to cooperate as national coordinators or at least a contact person, this would be fine from Milan to have this new European academic network on the Istanbul Convention, thanks to your help and support. So, thank you so much. Thank you again, Marina and Daniela, and I hope that our cooperation can continue.
Thank you very much to Professor Nicoletti, who is, for those of you who don't know this, he is the European Academic Coordinator of Ocean. So his speech or his concluding remarks were very structural, and I think he basically talked about everything that there's to be said. So I will not echo everything he has said and just repeat it, just supplement it with a few points from my point of view as somebody who's working in the secretariat and who is doing, so to speak, the daily work on ocean, for example, the development of the website, the contact with those who are interested in ocean, the communication, and so forth. But before I do that, I would like to say my heartfelt thanks to Professor Marina Calloni and also to Daniela Belliti. We have been in touch for I don't know how many weeks, actually months. We have worked together on this, but of course the main work has been done here at Milano Bicocca, and I have followed it from afar. I mean, I've done on my side what we could, and of course Professor Nicoletti was also part of the team, so it's a joint cooperation which I think has turned out to be really fantastic. So I'm very grateful to you.
We did not spend all budget.
You did not spend all the budget. That's very bad news because budgets have to be spent. Yes. So you are giving us money back, that's good. So you're not giving it back, okay. All right,
no, but not exceeding the budget.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's also very good news. So in a way, we have set an example of how ocean can operate. Because as I said yesterday, we have had 4 activities. Apart from the summer school in Liverpool, which was a different format, of course, that was like an ongoing thing for 2 weeks. It was really a summer school, but this was an international conference, so a different format. But for that format, I think what we have experienced yesterday and today, in a way, it's setting a standard, and I certainly hope that we can repeat a similar experiences with other conventions, because obviously we have started with the Istanbul Convention, but ocean is open to all other conventions, and we need to expand into other fields. But the Istanbul Convention here is really the avant-garde in a way. Yeah. So we have done more work on the Istanbul Convention so far than on the other conventions, and you're setting a little bit the pace, and we are learning from experience, and I think the example you have set here is very, very promising, and we will certainly debrief at some point in a week or so. The organizers will meet, and we will talk more and in more depth about what we can learn from this experience, and then hopefully apply it in the future. As I said, I'm the one who's more on the practical side, so again, my call to you, if you have worked in the past or you're planning to work on the Istanbul Convention academically, and I think you are the perfect candidate for membership, do not hesitate to fill in the form. I promise I will process your membership request as quick as possible. So we need to expand. So this is Ocean as such is a project that's set on or is dependent on expansion, you know. And we still have lots of blank spots, so I've talked to some of the Polish colleagues and some others, so I think Poland will be very soon also on the ocean map, and I'm looking forward also, as Professor Nicoletti has pointed out, to your suggestions with regard to what activities you would like to realize, if you have ideas. My email address is very easy to remember. It's Olaf and then Köntgen, but with an OE, not the O, not the Ö, not the umlaut, but OE, and then @coe.int. So do not hesitate to write to me if you have any ideas, any suggestions for cooperation. I'm getting these suggestions almost on a weekly basis now, and it's wonderful to see how creative and how full of ideas academics are, and I think this will also have a huge impact on the website development, because we will soon probably have like a section on research projects, maybe a section on ocean members publications and all of that. So the website and the project is depending very much on your creativity, but I'm extremely optimistic that this is going really, really well. So I think this is what I would like to say as a conclusion from my side, but I'm sure there are a lot more ideas here coming from Marina now, and she has the final word.
Thank you. Perhaps you have not noticed, ocean is a very nice word. It's an acronym. I don't know whether you have noticed that we choose a blue, but it's a matter of ocean. It's not a gender based, it's because it was to do with ocean, water. And what I want to say is that I thank you very much, also on behalf of my colleagues. And it's very early to say what's happened in these 2 very intensive days. Perhaps if you agree, we'll draft a final document after this conference, saying a little bit what was the main issue we discussed, but also what we should do. And perhaps also we can also draft, as the president of the Grevio said today, and I talked to her yesterday because she left, about also to indicate some guidelines, how also in relation to the experience we did, how to help to constitute a network. But of course then you can change as you want, but perhaps could be of inspiration. So the aim of this concert was just to open up new alliances and also dialogue between and among different cultures, disciplines, research, but also to show not only critical points, but also good practices, which have been experienced in Europe, and just to put in contact, in touch, universities, researchers, and research. And I know that also the debates, not only in the plenary, but also during the parallel section, were very intense. I have to apologize because we had some technical problems, but we did our best because we had many, at least 20 main speeches. We had 84 panels, in the panel papers, and all of these, the abstract of these papers, CV of presenters, speakers, and scholars have been published on the website of UNIRE, so you find all there. Then also I was told that we had also many viewers, so I'm very grateful to all participants which have participated in a quantitative and qualitative way to the result of this first Pan-European conference. So it's not just we are at the beginning, because we know now what are also the obstacles for the application of Istanbul Convention. We'll see then with the ratification of the European Union what happened. But it's clear that we have to talk, to increase our dialogue on this point, because we have seen that many countries have difficulties just in applying the Istanbul Convention, and only 37 have put it in force. We have also to talk of what does it mean prevention, risk evaluation, in sense what is the role of the university, and also just informing students who will be future professionals, and also to open up a dialogue also with professionals. And also to see what's the problem, because it was an increasing also issue, the issue of harassment in university. We know that there is a ILO convention on harassment at workplace, and now it has become an issue also on campus. So, and many presentations were dealing with this problem. So we have just to understand, to harmonize, perhaps in Italy also what's happening. So just to gather also information that perhaps will make a survey in collaboration with the CRUI, the Conference of the Italian Rectors. Important what said also the president of the Grevio about the role of education, university, mainly for the country which are not yet ratified it. And we'll not have time just to have a feedback from the parallel section, so we'll ask to the chair and the co-chair just to send us perhaps a summary of their parallel section,
in order just to get a feedback, just to see what are the common tasks, best practices, or what we need to develop. Because it's important to share theoretical premises, instrument, tools of analysis, methodologies. We also today we have a different kind of methodologies, quantitative, qualitative, or theoretical in my case, and also the research methodology. And then what do we mean for intersectional approach, not only at the university, in research, teaching, but also at the political level, institutional level. How do we have to work in collection of data which can be useful for also social policies? And so just to reflect upon what could be the benefits of our academic networks in relation to university, as said, institution, national institution, local authorities, and also international European institution. Then how do we have to also to make compulsory the training, for instance, of teachers and and other kind of professional, and how do we have to work in school? I have to say it because I was very much not surprised, but there was a debate at the Chamber of Deputies a few days ago, and was proposed not only the education of emotional education, but also the sexual education in school. And there was a bagarre because many MPs were against the fact that it was too trivial, pornographic, and so on. But we know that in Italy there are an increasing number of minors who did rape as a part of the group of individuals, and there is also the increasing also of sexual transmitted diseases. So this is also a crucial point of also public health. So now we have to think about how to develop our network in a very flexible way, not just too difficult to manage, as we saw also as Renata Kla did for 13 years, and just to share knowledge in a knowledge society and with soft skills, as our student would say, and just a respect of pluralism. So what does it mean in this case? Also to gain equalities. So what we could also try to prepare, to think how to prepare teaching materials, or just to how to get early detection of violence also in our working place. I remember this was a note that sent me also Sara De Vido, saying that the good practice in Greece, that is a memorandum on understanding of NGO with the University of Athens to provide legal and aid support. This could be also a very good praxis. And finally, so we have to find funds, as you said, and we know it, just to not only at the national level, but the European level. So finally, perhaps we can, after this conference, to create a manifesto of cooperation, which can be inspired by the work of our networks and work, but we have to discuss with Olaf and Michele. And and then perhaps also because of the possibility now, necessity of the ratification of the European Parliament, perhaps we can also think about a meeting between the President of the Grevio, and she agrees, and the Vice President of the European Parliament, so that they can start to talk because they are very much engaged. Okay, I finished. Just my thanks to all participants in presence, because you came with spending your money from abroad, so I'm very, very grateful, because I know how much it is valuable for us. Also colleagues were online because they couldn't come, many were sick, and other, like Renate, had an accident. And so thanks to all, and I think that I will forget somebody. So thanks to Daniela Belliti, thanks to Giorgia Serughetti, Anna Gadda, Sveva Magaraggia, Elisabetta Ruspini, Tanya Sekulic, and Antonio Sibilia, who is our student. He is finishing a master thesis on the issue of victims with a stage at the CNR, Center of National Research in Bologna, and he's learning a lot, not only just coming and going. So I thank the panelists and the technicians, Max, Francesco, and also please forward my greetings to you, greetings and thanks to your colleagues, the graphicist, press office, photographer, web office, the logistic, and then to all the other people I did not mention, but I did not forget them. Okay, thank you very much.